In the month of May, I read 14 books, and today I'm going to talk about them. Hi everyone, I'm Rhonda and welcome to a new video. I'm doing my May wrap up and I had a pretty good reading month. I started off strong. I was reading a lot of really good books, 4, 5, 3-star books. Actually, I don't think any book this month got less than 3 stars. But having said that, I did DNF 2 books. Real quick, let's talk about my May TBR and let's see how I did. So as you can see, I read 4 out of the 7 books that my TBR jar helped me pick for the month of May, which is pretty good. I usually read about 4 or 5 books, sometimes a little less, but here lately I've been doing pretty good with it. So as I said, I did DNF 2 books. The first one I DNF'd is The Apple Tree, which I am super bummed about. This is the second book in the Sunday Morning trilogy, and I read Sunday Morning, I want to say last month or the month before, I can't remember, and that was a surprise 5-star read. I really love that book. And so I was really excited to start with the second book this month called The Apple Tree. So this whole series is going to be about 3 sisters who are raised in a small town. They come from a very religious household because their dad is a preacher. And these are very spicy books, borderline taboo content, but I was able to get through the first book and I was able to read those spicy scenes and really enjoy that story. Like I said, I gave that one 5 stars. And then with this one, we're following the middle daughter. So here we're following an 18-year-old girl who just graduated from high school. So she's very young. And next door, a 29 or a 30-year-old man moves in with his son. He is a single dad and she is very attracted to him and she keeps inserting herself into his life. And he's obviously like, you are young, and keeps pushing her away. And so she ends up becoming a babysitter for his son. And also too, even though he's pushing her away, he is still very attracted to her. And so with this one, once that bedroom scene hit, I DNF'd it because I could not get behind this book because of the age gap. And usually that's not a big deal. My husband is 9 years older than me, so I don't mind age gap romances. With this one, because she is so young, she just graduated from high school. And he's a 30-year-old man. I could not get behind it. The romance scene was very ick and cringy, and that's why I DNF'd it. But the third book, following the youngest sister, came out this month, and I do want to give that one a chance. I just could not read this one, which is a big bummer because I thought I would love this one just as much as the first one. It got really good reviews on Goodreads, and I could not get behind that romance. It was, oh, no. But moving on to the other book, I did DNF, and sadly that is The Tanglewood Tea Shop by Lilac Mills. This is a book that I picked for my spring TBR, or one of the books I picked for my spring TBR. And this is more of like a cozy little romance set in the springtime. So in this one, you're following Stevie, who has inherited a great deal of money from her great Aunt Peggy. And she uses that money to purchase a little tea shop / cafe in a small town set in the English countryside. When she gets to this small town to look at the tea shop to purchase it, she has an interesting meet cute with the main man in this book called Nick. And so through this whole book, you're following her as she sets up this tea shop and her romance with Nick. And I got a little less than halfway through it. You're following the POV of Stevie and Nick. And Stevie's POV was really good. You're following her as she's, you know, getting things for her, this tea shop, and she's opening and how it's going. I was really invested in that. And then you're also following the POV of Nick, and I did not like his part in the book. He is, I think he runs a stable or something. Yeah, he's a grouchy stable owner, and his entire chapters are all about horses. I was bored to tears. I do not care about horses. I mean, I like horses, but I don't want to read entire chapters about horses. I don't. And so I was really bored with that. And like I said, I got almost halfway through, and we've only had a couple of interactions between Stevie and Nick, so this one was a little too cozy and a little too slow for me. And this is another one I'm bummed out about because it got really good reviews on Goodreads. So this is the only other book I DNF. All right, let's move on to where I'm at in the Throne of Glass series. You guys know I am trying to read the entire 8-book series this year. That's one of my goals. And I read Heir of Fire, which is the 4th book in the series, if you count The Assassin's Blade. And I gave this one 3 stars. I liked it. It was fine, but I was very bored through this one. In case you don't know, you're following Selena, and in the first book called Throne of Glass, you're following her as she is competing to become the king's assassin. So that is all you need to know. I went into this entire series blind, and I think that's definitely the way to go. I've really been enjoying this series. with the exception of this one. I would say this kind of feels like a filler book, like a really thick filler book, because I feel like we were going one way in one direction with the entire series, but then SJM kind of pulled us back and is steering us in a different direction. I just got those vibes. I don't know. But in this one, it took me 2 weeks to read because I felt like, yes, we were getting really interesting information. We were following different and interesting characters, and I was loving that. But I would get like 50 pages of really good action scenes or scenes where we are getting really juicy information. And then there would be 150 pages of nothing burgerness. I was just bored. So I gave this one 3 stars. I will say I felt like she was really setting us up for a really killer next book, which is Queen of Shadows. And that is what I'm reading right now. I'm actually halfway through it almost. And I'm loving this one so far. This is kind of like a 5-star read. But this one, again, it was a 3-star. It felt kind of filler bookish, and it was okay. Okay, the very first book that I read in May was The Last Love Note by Emma Gray. And I absolutely love this book. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars. But in this book, you're following Kate, and she is actually a widow. Her husband has passed away a few years prior, and she is now a single mom raising her 5-year-old son. But while she's on a work trip, her plane gets diverted to Australia because of some mechanical issues. And during that little layover, she's actually there for several days, she really just starts trying to decide how she can move on without her husband, how she can fall in love again if she's ready, that sort of thing. So really this entire book is about grief and moving on. It's about friendships. It's about letting go and healing, and I really, really love this. You're following the POV of Kate. You're also going back in time to when she met her husband and what happened to him and why he died. And so that was really gut-wrenching, and I really felt for her. This book was just so good. It was incredibly emotional. There are also a lot of moments where it was incredibly funny and I was laughing. The beginning scene of this book is hilarious. But I feel like overall, it was just a great, I think this is her debut novel. It was spectacular. It touched my heart deeply, and I was absolutely recommend it. And also too, there is a romance in here that is so sweet and so gentle, and it is a true slow burn, and I really enjoy the romance in here. But mostly this book is about grief and moving on. So if you have not read this book, definitely add it to your list. This was a 5-star read. The next book I read I read Leila by Colleen Hoover. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull the band-aid off and say I actually really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I know some of you are like, what in the world, Rhonda? Hear me out. Okay, so this is about a man named Leeds. He meets his dream girl while he's performing with his band at a wedding. They end up moving in together. However, Leila ends up getting in an accident, and it is life-changing, and she's just not the same. So in order to kind of help her heal and bring back the Leila that he fell in love with, he decides to take her to this bed and breakfast, which is where they met at that wedding. So he just hopes that being there with him will kind of bring back the Leila he fell in love with. Well, once they get there, all I'm going to say is things happen. It goes off the rails. I was reading this book, I think I was halfway through, and I put it down and I was like, what in the world am I reading? This is crazy. This is completely bananas. But I ate this book up. I think I read it in like a day. It's actually pretty short, but I really enjoyed it. It was very entertaining. If you're looking for a book that is just straight up entertainment, this is it. Loved it. Gave it 4 stars. I think this is my 4th Colleen Hoover book. And then the only other Colleen Hoover book that is on my TBR that actually got picked by ChatGPT when I did my June TBR video is Verity. I'm going to read that this month, but those are the only books I have by Colleen Hoover. So if you feel like there's other books that you've enjoyed that you think I need to read by the same author, please let me know. I read It Ends With Us, It Starts With Us, and November 9, as well as this one. So let me know in the comments if I should read any other Colleen Hoover books or if there's any you recommend. But this was a 4-star read, completely entertaining. That's all you're going to get out of it, and it was pretty bonkers. Okay, and then the next 3 books I read after Leila were art copies that I got through NetGalley. The first one is The Retirement Plan, and in this one it's kind of like a cozy mystery or kind of like a whodunit type mystery, and you're following a group of 3 or 4 women who are best friends. They're in their 60s and they're married and their husbands were friends. Their kids grew up together. They all lived on the same little neighborhood block. Well, their husbands made a really bad investment and lost all of their retirement money. So they are back at work and they're pretty miserable. They hate their husbands. They feel like their marriages are not doing great. Well, one of the men has a kind of like an accident, and come to find out he had a $1 million insurance policy. Through that man's death, one of the friends ends up an instant millionaire because of that insurance policy, and she is giddy. She is moving to Florida. She's going to buy a condo. She's happy. Her husband's dead. She doesn't miss him. She's moving on. Well, the other 3 friends are kind of jealous. They hate their husbands. They're not happy in their marriage. They want the $1 million too, and they know that their husbands bought a policy as well. So they hatch up this plan to hire a hitman to kill their husbands for the insurance money. However, the husbands have something up their sleeves too. So that is what this book is about. I can't remember if I told you who wrote it, but it's Sue Hinsberg's. And I love this book. I gave it 4 stars. This is the most chaotic and ridiculous and funny cozy mystery I've read in a while. It is about older women, which I really appreciate, and it was funny. I was laughing so hard. It kind of has kind of like that snarky, dark humor that I like. I just had a fun, good time with it. I love the friendship in this book. I felt like the dynamic between the women was pretty amazing, and it reminded me a lot of my own friendships with some friends from college who I still stay in contact with. They're my best friends, and this was just a laugh out loud, funny, it's off the rails, and it is just a great book. So if you're looking for just kind of like a cozy mystery for the summertime, I would recommend The Retirement Plan. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read is It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan. That book is actually being released today, so I don't have my copy yet. Eventually I'll get one. But this is a closed-door romance, and to be honest with you, I have loved every Annabelle Monaghan book I've read. She's written 3 other books on her backlist. I've read them all, and then I read this one, and I gave this one 4 stars. I loved it too. I don't think Annabelle Monaghan can write a bad book. I don't think she has it in her. Love this book. So in this book, you're following Jane Jackson, and she used to be a child actress for this show where it was a show for kids, and there was a band and they played music, and you know, there was always a storyline, but she was like the comedic character. She was the one with the egg on her face. She was just there for a comedic relief. And now she's an executive at a movie production company, and there's this movie that she wants to get made. However, her boss is kind of putting the brakes on it. And so in order to get this movie made, she lies and says, hey, I know Jack, which is this very well-known, very popular singer. I know him from my days of doing the show, and I can get him to do a song for the soundtrack if you will greenlight this movie. And the boss is like, yeah, if you can get him to do a song for the soundtrack, I will absolutely let you make this movie. So of course Jane has lied. She does not know Jack. She hasn't spoken to him since she was 16 when they were working together with this show. And then also at that meeting is Dan. Dan and Jane actually know each other previously. He's kind of sabotaged some of her other projects that she's wanted to do. And he might be the cinematographer for this movie. And he pulls Jane aside and he's like, you know what? I know you're lying about knowing Jack. He is actually playing at this music festival where my parents live. I think it's in Rhode Island or I don't know, one of the islands. And he's telling her he can get her backstage at this festival to get a FaceTime with Jack. So she agrees to go with him back home. They end up staying at his parents' house, and that's all you need to know. So because she knows Jack and he's tried to sabotage her before, there's a little bit of rivalry to lover situation. It's enemies to lover. I had a good time with this. It was such a good book. Like I said, Annabelle Monaghan can do no wrong in my eyes. This one felt like just a cozy, sun-soaked hug, and I loved it. Annabelle Monaghan writes really good romances. They're closed-door romances. The pacing is always fantastic. I am never bored in her books. If you're looking for a book that you can just sit down and read and binge read it, pick up any one of her books. But this one is her newest release, and I loved it. The romance was sweet. I loved the summery vibes it gave. And this was also kind of a slow burn, and it was just a good one, and I couldn't recommend it more. The next book I read kind of on a whim is Their Double Lives by Jamie Lynn Hendricks. So this is kind of like a mystery thriller, and it's about this girl named Kim who is, by day, she is a graphic designer, but at night she works at this really swanky country club as a waitress to all the rich people. And she's kind of in a rut. Her longtime boyfriend cheated on her, and then her dog has a brain tumor and he needs this really expensive $10,000 surgery that she can't afford. Well, one day she opens her door and there's a package with a burner phone, and there's a note saying, answer the phone when it rings. She does, and the voice on the other line says, we know you need money for your dog. We will give you, I can't remember how much it is, we'll say $20,000 if you kill this person at your country club. And then there's a series of things she has to do to get what she needs to murder this person. Well, unbeknownst to her, the person she's supposed to kill is a guy that she dated when she was in high school. So that is what this book is about. I listened to it on audiobook, and I think that is the best way. I had the best time reading it. I did give it 3 stars because I felt like it really wasn't anything special. It was just a straight up entertaining book. It was fun. It's very much about revenge, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like the narration of the audiobook was engaging. It was well paced, and I felt like the narrator did a good job with all the different voices, and she actually had me laughing because one of the character POVs that you're following just was very snarky and hateful, and I was just laughing whenever it was her POV. And also, one last thing with this one, you do kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit just because moments of the book were pretty far-fetched, and I don't know, it really wasn't a realistic thing, but I felt like it was still very enjoyable and I had a good time with it. The next book I read is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I bought this specifically for my oldest daughter. She mentioned that she wanted to read this, and my Barnes & Noble and the little cafe, they had this book for $5. So I picked it up for her, but I wanted to read it before she did just to make sure it's something that I felt comfortable with her reading, and it's fine. I was pleasantly surprised how much I enjoyed this one. I don't typically read YA romance just because I'm 46 years old now, and I feel a little weird reading romances about 16-year-old kids. But so this book is about Liz, Wes, and Michael, and they kind of grew up together a little bit, but Michael moved away like in elementary school. Well, flash forward, and Liz and Wes are now seniors in high school, and Michael moves back to town her senior year, and Liz is absolutely smitten. She is so attracted to Michael, and she wants him to ask her to prom. Well, Wes and Michael are really good friends, and Liz seeks out Wes's help to get Michael to ask her to prom. And really that's what this book is about. It's about Liz and Wes, and their banter was so cute and so fun, and I just thought this was just a really sweet little YA romance. I loved all of the little rom-com references, and also too with Liz, her mom has died, and this senior year for her is incredibly emotional because she's always pictured her mom there for her to help her go pick out her prom dress and all the little activities that are associated with being a senior. She's always pictured her mom being there, and she's not. My mother died when I was 12, so I absolutely related to what Liz was going through because I went through the same thing when I was a senior, and actually I still go through the same thing to this day. Every milestone in my life hits a little bit different just because I've always expected my mom to be there, like when I got married, when I had kids, those type of things. So I really related to Liz and what she was going through, and I definitely found those moments emotional, and I really felt for her. So overall, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a sweet romance. I gave it 4 stars. I felt it was a heartfelt and a charming read, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who really enjoys YA romance. The next book I read is another art copy I got through NetGalley, and that was No One Was Supposed to Die at This Wedding by Catherine Mack. This is the second book in the Vacation Mystery series by the same author. I read the first book called Every Time I Go on Vacation Someone Dies. I read that one last summer, and I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. And this one kind of picks up where that one left off. You're just following the same character. You're following Eleanor Dash. She is the author of a cozy mystery series, and she goes to Catalina Island. There is a movie being made of a series that she wrote, and after the movie wraps, her best friend, who plays the main character in her books in the movie, is getting married. So she's there not only for this movie, but to also watch her best friend get married. However, right before the wedding happens, she gets a note that says someone is going to die at the wedding. At this point, after what happened in the first book, Eleanor kind of feels like she's a pro when it comes to solving murder mysteries, and so she takes it upon herself to kind of figure out what's happening. I was really excited about this book just because of how much I loved that first book, and I had a good time with this one. Just like in that first book, there's a lot of just quirky characters. The author's breaking that fourth wall with all of her footnotes again, but what hit well with that first book just did not hit the same in this one, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I felt like it was fun. I just wasn't as invested in the characters like I was in the first one. So that is why I gave it 3 stars. It's still a good book, and if you have not read Every Time I Go on Vacation Someone Dies and you're looking for a good, just cozy mystery this summer, I would recommend that one. And then you can pick up this one. It was still good. I enjoyed it. It just did not hit the same way as that first book, which is why I only gave it 3 stars. The very next book I read was The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. Oh my goodness, this was so good. I gave it 4 stars. In this book, you're following the POV of Jim Doyle, who is working at a supermarket as a security guard, and he comes across a book called The Nothing Man, which is written by Eve Black. So Eve Black is actually a survivor. Her entire family, with the exception of her, was killed by the Nothing Man, who is a serial killer that was never caught in Ireland. And so Jim is looking at this like, huh, because Jim is actually the Nothing Man. He is the serial killer that Eve Black is writing about in her book. So he immediately buys the book and he's reading it. And what I found unique about this book is it's kind of like a book within a book. So not only are you following Jim Doyle's POV, but there are chapters from the book that he is reading in this book. So not only are you reading along with him, but you're also getting Jim Doyle's reactions to what he's reading, which I found fascinating and interesting and unique. I haven't read a book like that before. This book, I felt like the writing was really sharp. I really love the writing. It really hooked me. And some of the, I'm not gonna lie, some of the accounts of the Nothing Man's victims, you do find out what happened to them. And those parts were really hard to read. But what I loved most about this book was the message about serial killers in general. There is a message that's saying serial killers are literally nothing. We glorify and make documentaries about serial killers, but we don't think about the victims. We don't talk about the victims. We don't know their names. Instead of glorifying these serial killers, we really need to uplift the voices of the victims and remember them and honor them. And those are the ones who we should be talking about, not these horrific people who are literally nothing. So that is what I got from this book. I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend this one, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love this one. This was such a good character-driven book, and I knew I was going to love it going into it just because I read my first TJR book a couple of months ago called The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I gave that one 5 stars, so I went into this one expecting to love it, and I did. In this book, you're following Nina Rivas through one of the POVs, and this is set in the early 80s, and she is very well known. She is pretty much the face of that California girl, that surfer girl look that got popular in the early 80s. And you're following her POV as well as the POVs of her brothers and sisters. She has 2 brothers and a younger sister, and you're just following their lives. This book is also told through another timeline and other POVs of her dad and mom. You're learning about how they met, how they fell in love, how they got married and started a family. Well, her dad is actually Mick Rivas, who is a very famous singer, and so that is where she is from. She is the daughter of this very famous singer. So this book is a family drama. It is beautifully written. Again, it's a character-driven book that I read in less than a day. I could not put this one down. I loved how deeply it explored the themes of family and loyalty and the strength it takes to show up for the people you love. And it stole my heart. I really felt for each of these kids and what they went through. And I really enjoyed following each of the POVs because I felt like they were vividly drawn. Those characters were so well done. They were complicated in their own way. And I fell in love with each of them and just this entire family. I wanted to give them all a hug. And also too, what I loved about this book is I love that it's set in the early 80s because that's my childhood. And I love that it was set in Malibu and learning about Malibu before it got popular, which I did not know that it wasn't always just this rich people town. Anyway, I give this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. And I think if you love books about family drama and how it digs deep into how messy and complicated families can be and the bonds that hold them together, then you need to pick this one up. It's for you. I really enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars. Next up, I want to talk about my last 2 books, and I'm going to talk about them together. And I read The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. This is kind of like a mystery thriller. And then I read the sequel that came out this year called The Perfect Divorce. And so I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I don't want to give away The Perfect Marriage in case you didn't read it. But in this one, you're following Alice Morgan, who works as a defense attorney at a law firm where she is partner. And her husband has been arrested and accused of murdering his mistress. And she ends up becoming her husband's defense attorney. And then The Perfect Divorce picks up about a year or two after the end of the epilogue. So with these two books, I ended up giving them both 3 stars, which is not a bad rating. That means they were fine. I still enjoyed them. I did find them twisty. They were fun and they kind of kept me entertained, which is what I look for when I read any book. Now, were these books predictable? Yes. Were they unrealistic? Yes. Were they groundbreaking? No. Did I still have a good time reading them? Yes, absolutely. I still had a great time reading them. I think you just need to go into them and suspend your disbelief and just go in expecting to have a good time, and you might enjoy them. These are not perfect books by any means, but I had a lot of fun and I enjoyed them, so I gave them both 3 stars. All right, my friends, that's all I have. These are the 14 books that I read in the month of May. If you can, please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books. Do you agree with any of the ratings I gave? Do you disagree? Also, let me know what books you read this month and let me know what was your favorite book for the month too. I think my favorite is going to be The Last Love Note by Emma Gray. This was such a well-written debut novel. Chef's kiss. It was so good. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.